When the pandemic struck, I quite immediately began to feel like your UBI advocacy took on an obviousness that had eluded me during the campaign, right? And I'll get to why in a second. Like, I feel like you were singing a song that became very obvious to a lot of people once you suddenly have millions of people from one week to the next thrown out in the street, losing jobs, being evicted. You know, it's been obvious to me and many other people for a while that you shouldn't tie healthcare to employment, for example, right? And I think the point you were making was that you shouldn't tie employment to the rudiments of, human dignity.
Living.
I was very persuaded by that, and I was belatedly persuaded by it because of the pandemic. And I think you deserve a lot of credit for elevating that. I'll tell you what my lingering non-pandemic reservation is, and I'm curious your thought, and then we can go to the rest of the Here We Are Now agenda. My reservation is, and I think I mentioned this in the book, that I fear that a UBI assumes a bleak future for ordinary people in a way that maybe
we can avoid?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
I fear that it concedes a point that I'm not willing to concede, which is, for example, 40% of people will not have regular work, whatever the numbers are, right? Like, yeah. And you're more of an expert on these actual trends than I am, for sure. But I view any of those types of outcomes as being the product of politics, not the product of forces. Like, I actually don't think, I think there is some tax regime, some regulatory regime in place where even profound technological shifts do not have those impacts. Now, I don't know if they're passable. I don't know if we're going to do them. But I think part of why, and I know you come at it from a very different place, but part of why the UBI is very popular in the Valley, right? And a lot of those people love you more than you love them back, is because I think what they hear in your UBI thing is like, we'll get to continue the current power relations of the country. Like, we'll get to continue having these monopolies. We'll get to continue having labor precarity so that we don't have to make Uber drivers work. And now, in a way, I just worry that the well-meaning thing becomes almost an excuse to not change those power equations. We don't need to fix labor law to fight this notion of people being made contractors instead of employees because they'll have a UBI. We don't need to rebuild unions because even if we don't, people will be eating and living. And I'm not sure where I land on it, to be honest, which is, I think, something you're not supposed to say. But I don't know what I think about this, But I'm curious how you think about the risk of conceding a future that's bad for workers when, in fact, we may have democratic choices we could make that would make the future not unfold like that at all.
I don't think I was arguing for the future anymore. I just looked outside my window and said, this is here and now. Mm-hmm. This is where we are. If you look around, is the precarity already here? Are Americans working 2-3 jobs? Do school teachers have to commute 90 minutes in order to come teach people's kids in rich areas and then have Uber advertise to them that hey, we found school teachers make good Uber drivers, and parentheses, we know that you can't live just on a school teacher salary anymore. I mean, all of the bleak shit that people fear is here. Now the pandemic sped it up and made it crystal clear. But all you have to do is look at our legislators and say hey, have these people been on the ball, making the right political choices for the last X number of years? So a lot of it, Anand, is just I just said, look, shit is much bleaker and nastier right now than most people accept. And as soon as you actually scratch the surface and flip the rock over, you're like, whoa, this is actually really, really dark mm-hmm. and punishing and inhuman and destroying people's ways of life are disintegrating right and left. You grew up in the Midwest, right? For at least a period.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've spent
people always telling me to go back to my country. It's I'm not going back to Cleveland.
Yeah. Shaker Heights. I have some friends from there. So I saw what happened to Ohio. The aftermath of the decimation of manufacturing jobs has just left a lot of those communities in a really rough spot. It was a woman in Cleveland who said to me, she said, hey, around here, change is a 4-letter word. And I had to figure out what the heck she was talking about. I was like, it's factually not. But also, how can you regard change as so negative? And it was only after spending time with her, she said, look, for us, change means the plant closing, people leaving. Success here in this part of Ohio means leaving. It's one reason why LeBron coming back was such a big deal, is that like if you just see people deserting your town right and left, then if I say, hey, we're going to change things around here, like your mind immediately goes to, well, like that's probably bad for me because like I haven't seen a good change in quite some time.
So, but what do you think about this notion of, I mean, what the people you're talking about lack is both money and power, right? By which I mean political power in particular, right? So if you're that union or ex-union person in Ohio,
worker in Ohio, sure,
right? A, you have less money because of deindustrialization, but B, like you may not have a union job anymore, or your union maybe have less membership, maybe less powerful, may have less pull.
All true.
Now, my concern would be, but talk me out of it. Like my concern would be, okay, we start giving that person $12,000 a year as a guaranteed income. Great. I'm concerned that doesn't fix the power issue and that there's other problems in their life.
I'm going to pitch this to you,
schools and this and that will not just be fixed by them having more cash in there. But there's some issues that will be, but their lack of power will still result in, and that it might reduce the urgency of dealing with what feels like the fundamental issue.
This is really important to me. So number one, I'm not against other things that help improve that person's situation. I'm for giving them money, and I'm for easing, the ability for people to form unions and collectively bargain. Like I'm for ways to pay teachers more. Like to me, like you can be for all of these things because they're all the right things to do. But here's the bigger thing. Is that community more empowered to actually be able to stand in line and vote, to actually resist employer exploitation, to actually like maybe make some investments in their schools or volunteer their time for their kids at the PTA or like whatnot?
That's really
if they have that money in their pocket.
And so you're also paying them to be civic. You're giving them the kind of space in their life to be civic.
Yes. Like right now, if you say to someone who like, and I've been to these, you have too, I'm sure, like you're with this person in Ohio, and you're like, hey, get out and vote. Like they look at you and they're like, this does not fucking matter to me at all. Like my vote does not matter. And they have in many cases, like decades of experience telling them just that, and then there are people that like will never come near it because they're completely in despair or, they're completely disconnected from civic society. And that to me is not extraordinary anymore. And it's not even irrational. That's the toughest part, Anand. You can't be like, hey, if you just get your ass in and vote, we're going to fix everything. It's like, actually, not really. Like they could come and vote and like, their person just gets co-opted or their person just one vote in like a chorus or their person it's like the power dynamics are so broken. And then selling to them that like, hey, this vote's going to do it for you. If you can just get that person into city council or school board or da-da-da. It's like, that's not true. Like, that these systems, when the person gets there, like, even if they're good, they're going to get like their hands cuffed and like going to be beholden to some assholes. And then they'll be outvoted by like, that they're like, crazy cohort on like the city council or school board or state legislature or U.S. Congress or whatever it happens to be. The restoration of their ability to make better choices is contingent upon them actually having like the means to survive and be able to decide what to do with 6 hours of their time. Like it's ridiculous right now to go to someone who's like destitute and like struggling and can't make ends meet and be like, what I want you to do now? I want you to volunteer. I want you to vote. I want you to spend this time. It's like a lot more and more Americans are responding with a big fuck you. Like it says, and so like to me, the big step, if you get money in those people's hands, it gets their head up. And to use an international reference that people know, it's like if you look at countries that have more robust social benefits, like civic engagement goes up, protests go up, like various things happen where if you have some degree of liberty, then it's not a sedative, it's a stimulant. Sale
to the right. Give people free money and then they'll protest more,
Well, I'm just saying it's like give people money and they'll have actual like energy and visibility and the ability to participate.
I'm convinced by that. I think part of where I had the, before you were selling it, the people I most heard in interviews, particularly I was reporting the book selling this, were like Silicon Valley venture capitalists whose reasons are very different from yours, who didn't say any of the things you just said. And if I had to summarize what I heard from a lot of them, it was essentially, let's bribe people not to revolt, right? The future is going to be bad for these people. We want a future in which tech will be left alone, won't be regulated, in which monopoly will be able to function with impunity, in which there won't be wealth taxes, there won't be higher taxes on capital gains and high incomes. We want that future. And so let's conceive this. I'm just talking about from their point of view, like what is a way that we can get on board with an efficiently distributed social program that will be insurance, that kind of like libertarian insurance and protect our ability to keep being us. And I know you come at it from a very different place, but that was the intersection that always worried me. But I hear what you're saying. And I think, and I'm not sure, maybe I didn't hear it. I'm not sure I heard you talk about this in the campaign as much, which is like this notion of, if you expect people to be civic, you need to like buy
invest
them space.
You need to show you actually give a shit about them. Because like right now we're just paying lip service. It's like, hey, great news, you're an American, you can vote. It's like, we're not going to invest in you, your neighborhood, your family, your schools in any way. And if we do invest in them, we're going to make it ridiculously paternalistic and like bludgeon the shit out of you and just make you feel like a less than human being at every step of the way. But we love you and value you and care about you. Like the whole thing. One of the things I compare it to, Anand, it's like when you show up to a company, within like a day whether that company gives a shit about you. You know what I mean? Like that. There's there are companies where and then even when they do invest and do all the right things, some of it's misplaced and dumb, but you can at least tell like, okay, they're kind of trying. It's like this culture means that they have to at least show that they're investing something in their people. In terms of like the citizenship experience right now, there are many people that do not feel genuinely that we are investing in them, and they're not wrong. Like that, this would be the biggest reversal of that. One of the things I campaigned on was saying, imagine a country where you could look your kids in the eye and say, your country loves you, your country values you, and your country will invest in you and your future. Like, I mean, does that kid actually take civic engagement and voting much more seriously? I think so. And, it's like because then the government would be doing something concrete for them that they could understand. And, and it's very hard to argue with. It's one of the reasons why I ran on it was like, look, like it's hard to demonize cash. Like it's hard to look at it and say, this cash is going to hurt you. Like it's one way that we can get this thing done. And then make the changes. Like, I think it supercharges our ability to make the other changes because it ends up activating people and activates folks who can then start rolling back some of the things that you're describing. Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to Yang Speaks and click on notifications so we can let you know every time we have a new episode.